Good afternoon, everyone. How is everyone's Friday evening going? I hope everyone is having a decent day. It's been a pretty good day for me, aside from sleeping most of it. But if any of you get a chance, we went on panel twice today with CNY. Um, just talking and theorizing on Kylie Rodney. So if you're interested in that, you can go check out CNY's live. Most of you were probably, maybe already there and you saw it, but lots of theories and speculation talk, and I think it was a really good panel. So if you get a chance, go over and check that out. Sorry, and I know my mouse is really loud, and I apologize for that, but so there is CNY's link. Let me catch up on the comments. Michael, you're still not feeling well. I hope you feel better soon. And yeah, I've been sleeping off and on all day too. Hey, Mom First. Sugar and Spice, thank you for being here. Megs, I know you're cleaning but listening. Hey, Tracy, happy Friday. Fredfield, good to have you. Hi, Alice. I know that you're getting ready for dinner. What are you cooking? You always cooking some good food. Yes, this is Oakley Snow on the screen. And I will give a little background on the timeline just in case you guys didn't catch my last live on her before I jump into the affidavit. Um, the affidavit is really going to make people mad and all that stuff. But hey, Sifa,
Hey, sorry.
you're good. Glad you can make it.
Thank you. Hey, chat.
Hmm?
I was just saying hi to the chat.
Oh, yeah. Hey, what's go? So, yeah, I'm going to wait a few more minutes and let people come in. Um, I know it's Friday. Everybody's probably busy doing their thing, but no cooking today. Trying to get all to agree on takeout. Yeah, that's what we did, Alice. We got takeout. Um, Look at that precious. Yeah, she was. She was only 2 years old. Her story is heartbreaking, and I don't understand the parents. Sugar and Spice said something earlier about that. Like, what is going on with these parents? Yeah, this comment. Um, so you read the details, and it's just sad. Okay. Let me find the article. Okay. Is it zoomed in enough? That should be good. Exactly, Alice. So many people who just want to be parents, and then these things happen. All right. So just to go over what I went over on my live, just in case anyone is here that wasn't for that or may not be familiar with her story. She's 2 years old. She was last seen in Indianapolis after being taken by her mother, Madison Marshall, in January. Um, Her mother and the boyfriend, which is Rowan Waters, they are both in, um, in how do you say that? Incarcerated, in custody. um, so in November, Rowan, which is the boyfriend, had a warrant because he had struck Oakley in the face, causing her to have trauma to her mouth and lips. The affidavit will speak more about that. Um, let's see. So late January, early February is when they arrived at the home on Albany Avenue, which is the boyfriend's mother's home. And let's see. The sister that was there had seen bruises on Oakley's leg, and when she confronted them, she was told to leave. So the whole backstory, like they had even when they went and took Oakley and her little brother, her older brother Colton, from the biological father's home. I don't know the details of like how that went down. I don't think for sure it's in the affidavit. It just says that they were unauthorized to go and take the kids. Um, and they got a call from some guy named Chad where they had left Colton at a trap house. So they had to go and get Colton. Colton is now safe and back with the biological father. However, there was still nothing on Oakley. Um, they did end up catching up with Roan in, I believe it was Colorado. So he was arrested there. Madison Marshall, the mom, had somehow made her way to North Carolina, and that there was a tip from someone there, and they did end up arresting her also. So now I'm going to go into these stories of when she was found, because she was recently found. Let me make sure I have the date. So this was this week. I want to say the 26th. What's today's date? I don't ever know the date. Is the 24th or the 26th is when she was found. I want to say the 24th because it was earlier this week.
Yeah. It says the 24th is when that was published.
Okay, and then I guess they updated. Yeah.
Yeah. And today is the 28th. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, wrong one. This one. Okay. So officials confirmed they found the body of missing 1-year-old Oakley Snow in a dresser drawer of an abandoned building in Morgan County. Rowan Waters, her mother's boyfriend, faces charges which include murder and neglect of a dependent resulting in death. Her mother, 22-year-old Madison Marshall, already faced neglect charges in Indianapolis involving Oakley's baby brother. On Tuesday, those charges against Marshall were updated to include charges of neglect of a dependent resulting in death and assisting a criminal. In January 2023, okay, yeah, so this kind of just goes back over what I went through. And this is Madison Marshall, 22 years old. Investigators said they were able to track Marshall to North Carolina, where she was eventually located, arrested, and extradited back to Marion County. So she has been extradited back. During interviews with investigators, Marshall allegedly said that Waters killed Oakley and that they moved her body to Morgan County, Indiana in February. Her body was ultimately found in a dresser drawer of an abandoned structure. As parents, we have a duty to protect our children. Not only did these two individuals fail to live up to that responsibility, but the allegations in the probable cause affidavit indicate that Oakley suffered a horrific death and an abandonment that diminished the dignity that any child deserves. Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears said in a news release, "I want to thank the multiple law enforcement agencies and our prosecutors who worked tirelessly to locate this child and seek justice on her behalf." So that is one thing I am thankful for, that she was found. I don't know if you guys had seen, I think I put it in a community post, that there were child remains found in Indiana and that they thought were to be Oakley. So it turned out that those remains were not hers. We haven't heard whose remains those are, but they did find Oakley in a different location. So now I'm going to share this tab and catch up on the comments. I just don't get it. I wasn't a perfect parent, but I never hurt my child or put him in harm's way. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't understand what goes on through these parents' minds. And a lot of it is behind drugs and stuff. I mean, they left him, the brother, at a drug house. I just wish they would have left both of them there if they were going to do that. But yeah. Okay. So it is very lengthy. I'm just kind of kind of go over what I can because there's a lot of details in here. It's 26 pages. Some pages are just like formalities or whatever. But so on this one is about Madison. I can't highlight, but this is Madison's. So there is like, oh God, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 counts of different things. And here it goes into detail of all of their charges. So one of them is on February 9th, Madison Marshall, being at least 18 years of age and having the care of Oakley Snow, a dependent less than 14 years of age, did knowingly place said dependent in a situation that endangered the dependent's life or health and which resulted in the death of Oakley Snow. Count 2, she did knowingly deprive said dependent of necessary support to wit. What does that mean, Sifa? I don't understand that legal. Maybe to as a witness. I don't know. Failed to obtain medical care and which resulted in the death of Oakley Snow. Her third one was she knowingly placed said dependent in a situation that endangered the dependent's life or health, and that said act resulted in seriously bodily injury to said dependent unconsciousness. The other fourth count, disposing of the body of Oakley Snow, knowing Roan Waters had committed a crime to witness murder, a felony, with the intent to hinder the apprehension and or punishment of Roan Waters. And further, Madison Marshall was not standing in the relationship of parent, child, or spouse to Roan Waters. Count 5, on January 15th, having the care of Oakley Snow, a dependent did knowingly place the dependent in a situation that endangered the dependent's life or health. So it kind of just goes over, hold on, let me get my dogs out of here. They're loud. All the different charges and what they mean. And then I'm going to explain this right here in a minute. Okay, so when I'm going to be reading the affidavit, it's kind of hard to keep up with all of these names, like the initials, because they don't name everyone. But I do have a little cheat sheet here where I can kind of give y'all a rundown. So BP is Roan Waters' mother. So KW is his sister, and BW is Roan Waters' older brother. DW is the older brother's wife. So all of those initials have to do with the boyfriend's family. CM is the guy named Chad who witnessed them bringing Oakley out in the blanket. And he's the one who called in that tip. Zach Snow, which is ZS, he is the biological father. Let's see. And I know you guys are going to forget this because I do when I'm going over it. I just wanted you to kind of be familiar with who these are. It's basically friends and family, and these are all going to be like the state's witnesses. So it's family members of the boyfriend, and like LS and WS own the property that they were staying at. I mean, not where they were staying at. Where the home was, where they eventually found Oakley's body. LS and WS own those properties. So that kind of gives you an idea of who those people are. And then here is Roan Waters and all his charges. He also has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He has 8. And it goes over all of his charges too, which is very detailed. Okay. Let me catch up on comments and then I'll get to that part. Yeah, it is. It's very messed up and heartbreaking, Michael. Oh, thank you, Isco. I like it. Okay, thank you for explaining that. So a phrase meaning the following comes to mind. The phrase is sometimes used to introduce examples for a more general statement. It may follow a comma or form the beginning of a new sentence. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you, Isco. So I'm feeling like since they only kept Oakley and not Colton, was the boyfriend doing something else to her and wanted to? I don't think there's anything mentioned like that in the affidavit. But I do see what you're saying. I don't know why they chose to. Oh, it's sickening. Okay, so this is the officer. He gives like his background. And he explains this affidavit for probable cause does not contain each and every material fact known to me and other law enforcement officials from the IMPD or the FBI. This affidavit contains the necessary facts and information to establish probable cause for the arrest of Madison Marshall and the boyfriend. And I know they include their date of birth in here, but it is a public website. I'm not doxing anyone, just so anybody knows. This affidavit is on this link here, and I'll drop that in chat. It's a public document. I don't know why they would do that like that, but everything was unredacted, it seems. Okay, so on October 26, 2022, Madison Marshall contacted the Okfuskee County Sheriff's Office to report allegations of physical assault by her boyfriend, Roan Waters. Marshall alleged that Waters had struck her 1.5-year-old daughter, Oakley Snow, in the face during an altercation the day prior. Rowan Waters then hit Marshall in the head when she attempted to intervene in the assault. Deputies with the OCSO arrived at Marshall's shared residence with Rowan Waters in Cromwell, Oklahoma, and attempted to make contact with the occupants. Waters answered the front door and asked the deputies if they had a warrant to be on his property. Before they could answer, he slammed the door in their faces. The deputies attempted to explain through the closed door the purpose of their presence there was for a welfare check, but Waters yelled for them to get the F out. As the deputies returned to their marked police vehicles, a blue-colored SUV pulled up next to them. They identified multiple occupants inside of it to include Marshall, Oakley, and Marshall's 3-month-old son, CS, which is Colton. Waters appeared to see Marshall's interaction. So Waters is in the house. Marshall's is pulling up in the SUV to see Marshall's interaction with the officers and exited from the residence. He immediately began yelling so that the deputies could no longer hear what occupants of the SUV were saying. So caused a big scene, basically. He also began playing where does it go? Yeah, really loud music to further inhibit their conversation. The deputies eventually left the property after Marshall attempted to assure them that she and her children were not in danger. So that kind of made me upset because it's like, even though she had this altercation the day before, he struck both her and Oakley. She, for some reason, was just like, no, we're good, we're safe. And I get it, because a lot of people in that situation, you don't want to escalate things with the boyfriend. It could have been a narcissistic, toxic, abusive relationship. We don't know. But they ended up leaving the residence. So that was sad to me. So later that day, Zach Snow, which is biological father, contacted the OCSO to inform them that Marshall would now like to make a formal report to them. So Madison Marshall is now saying that she would like to make a formal report. Zach identified himself as the biological father of Oakley and Colton. Deputies arrived at his residence in Cromwell and spoke with Marshall. She was present with her 2 children. She stated that he had struck Oakley in the mouth with an open hand on October 25th because she had been crying. Marshall lifted up Oakley's upper lip so that the deputies could see the cut on the other side. Marshall explained that after Rowan Waters hit Oakley, she confronted him and he then slapped her across the left side of her face. The impact left a contusion over her left eyelid and cheek, which were visible to the deputies. They photographed Marshall's and Oakley's injuries and documented the report in order to present the case to the Okfuskee County Prosecutor's Office for possible charges. Marshall requested that only charges be filed against Waters for his abuse against Oakley rather than her. So then on November 7th, the warrant was filed. On or about January 19th, Zach Snow reported the disappearance of Oakley and Colton from his home of residence in Cromwell, Oklahoma. He reported to the Seminole County Sheriff's Office that Marshall and Rowan took his children from his home without authorization and had likely fled to Indianapolis to be with Rowan Waters' family. Skip to March 3rd, and this is kind of what we went over, before. He was arrested at the Best Western Hotel. Through their follow-up investigation at the scene of the arrest, they determined that Marshall had also been staying with him at the hotel, but had no reason to be detained at that time. Additionally, there were no signs that children had been with them there. Law enforcement identified Waters' cellular telephone number as, and however, no cell phone was present. Deputies from OCSO learned of his arrest later that day and requested assistance from and I'm not sure what that department is, with interviewing him about the disappearance of the children. Detectives interviewed him that same day. He stated that he had traveled from Oklahoma with Marshall and her two children, bearing Indiana license plate. They stayed at a trap house within the city of Indianapolis so that he and Marshall could use drugs. So he was very outspoken about what they were doing. He further stated that he and Marshall had made the decision to abandon Colton at the trap house and had also left Oakley behind in Indiana before traveling to Colorado. He added that his sister had recovered Colton from the house and had since turned him over to DCS. Waters was unable or unwilling to provide any further information about the trap house or the locations of either child. It's a lot of reading. I don't have any new chat. Is everybody following along? I hope I didn't lose everyone. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Trying to see the days that followed. Okay, yeah. So this one was important too because when they were reviewing Waters' jail calls made within the detention center, when he's speaking to his mother, during these calls, he informed her that he had lied to the police and had indeed been present when the children were each abandoned. He admitted to assisting Marshall with specifically dropping Oakley off somewhere. However, he did not provide details. Waters also spoke to Marshall from the 2033 phone number. She told him that she planned to change her name, though she never told him what her new alias would be. She explained that she had since made contact with his mom following his arrest and asked her what she should do now. They agreed to have Waters' older brother, so this is the boyfriend's older brother, and his wife travel to Colorado to take her back to Indianapolis. Marshall explained that his mom was coordinating these plans with the brothers on her behalf. There was no discussion as to the whereabouts of Oakley or Colton. So I don't know. This is just a big planned out thing, and like she's talking about changing her name. I think it even mentions in here that she's gonna change her appearance and everything. Let's see. Okay, so the sister did report the abandonment and recovery of Colton on February 9th at 7:41 that night. She had informed the caseworkers that her brother, Rowan Waters, and Marshall had left the child alone at a residence, and were told that they had taken Oakley to the hospital. She was unsure, and oh my God. The sister was unsure if and when they would return. DCS informed Rothermick that Zach Snow had taken back custody of Colton. All right, so we're going to move past that part. This is it goes back over all the stuff I went over on my last live, so I don't want to be repeating it. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to find the part of where I read where it explains everything, how it went down. Oh, geez, sorry, y'all. Bear with me. It's a lot of information. Okay, CM. I don't remember who CM was. Do you remember, Siva? Told you I
Well,
would forget.
Kristen is in the chat, by the way.
Okay. Okay, so CM is Chad. Let me get back to the comments.
Hey,
Hey,
Evie.
Kristen. Oh, you got guests. Okay, no problem, Kristen. Okay. Yeah.
I think I have a echo, maybe.
I don't hear one on my side. Are they saying that on your side?
No, I was just hearing one a little bit.
Huh.
I'm not hearing it right now.
That's weird.
Never mind.
I don't, might not be. I don't hear one.
Oh, no, I just heard it again.
Oh. So like you hear yourself echo?
Yeah,
Hmm.
a little weird. I might be annoying and drop down and then come back up.
No, you're good. That's not annoying. If you feel you need to do that.
Okay.
Okay. I'm trying not to lose everyone here. It's just a lot of information. So most of this is about Chad, which was the owner of the Albany house that I believe that they were staying with. Um, he stated that he had been friends with Waters and recalled when he, Marshall Oakley, and himself had moved into the house back in late January of 2023. He intermittently resided at the residence at the time. He described Waters and Marshalls as avid drug users. They typically snorted heroin, which would cause them to be non functioning for prolonged periods of time. He further described Waters and Marshall's care towards the children as relatively inattentive. They rarely, if ever, held them and instead would place them in front of the TV for the majority of the day. He never saw them provide the children with any love or affection. However, he did also observe bruising on Oakley's leg prior to her disappearance. So that breaks my heart that they weren't even like shown love or attention or anything that they should have. Um, Go ahead and try to speak. I think you're good though. They were saying they didn't have an echo, so it was probably on your end.
Yeah. I think I had my uh headset set up wrong.
Mm. Were you good now?
Yep.
Okay. So let's see. So then Chad remembered seeing Oakley earlier in the day on February 9th. She had walked up to him when he first entered the Albany Street address that morning, and she allowed him to pick her up. He noticed that she was wearing makeup around her eyes and mouth.
Mm.
He had never seen her wear makeup before, and it appeared that it had been applied by an adult. He also noticed a line going from her bottom lip to her chin that resembled a bruise. He stated he then left the house and did not return until later that day. This was the last time that he saw Oakley. Later that day, he observed Roan briefly arrive at the mom's house, BP, the nearby place of employment. Chad was also visiting there at the time. Rowan Waters seemed in a rush and somewhat frantic. He left after briefly conversing with his mom. So Chad then went to visit with B. Waters, who he was also close friends with. He remembered her receiving a call from BP later that afternoon in which she seemed extremely upset. She responded by saying, "I don't know what the F Waters has going on, but you all need to deal with it." They then hung up the phone. Chad stated that Waters would not tell him what the call was about that day and had since become much more distant towards him. Later that night, he returned to 305 Albany Street. He witnessed both Waters and Marshall there without either of their children. Both of them seemed high on drugs to the point of being incapacitated. Let's see. Okay, so they returned to the residence to participate in the search. I think the affiant was the officer. They observed numerous baby items on the first floor of the residence. This included clothing, toys, a playpen, rocker, unused diapers, and other childcare items. Members of the IMPD crime lab conducted a walkthrough of the residence, but they found no obvious signs of a crime scene. Therefore, no items were taken at that time. Detective Eric Parrish of the IMPD Missing Persons Unit, and your affiant both separately interviewed a nearby neighbor. She informed both of us that she had observed a cleaning crew or work company arrive at the residence sometime in February. The crew painted as well as moved items out to include a roll of carpet. They worked late into the night from what she recalled. She was unsure of exactly what date this had all transpired on, but was confident that it transpired at 305 Albany Street on or around the Super Bowl. But she stated that if the police were there looking for evidence of something, that it was probably gone now. On March 8th, the MCSC authorized the warrant to seize and review historical call logs and cell site history for both of their phone numbers. They further authorized the ping warrant to be issued to track in order to assist law enforcement with locating Marshall, who they believe now had custody of Roan Waters' phone. Also on this day, they authorized the warrant to seize and search the Dodge Durango that had been previously registered and used by Roan Waters. Members of the IMPD and FBI recovered it from outside of the home address of B. Waters. Upon law enforcement's arrival, B. Waters' wife, D. Waters, informed them that she had just thoroughly cleaned out the vehicle's interior the day before. She explained that she had done this because the Dodge had smelled overwhelmingly like animal feces. The IMPD transported the vehicle to the Animal Control Center for temporary holding in lieu of the search. The Missing Persons Unit initiated the physical search of the Durango that day. Detective K9 handler Anthony Weaver first walked a certified cadaver-smelling canine around the exterior of the vehicle. The dog indicated that human remains may have been inside of the Durango. The crime lab then searched the interior. They located what appeared to be dried blood splatter in the rear compartment of the SUV. Crime Lab physically removed the cushion material and submitted it to the IMPD property room for holding. On March 9th, and again, the affiant is Nicholas Hubbs, which was the detective. And Rothermick interviewed DW. She was aware of law enforcement's investigation into the whereabouts of Oakley. She stated that she had joined BW on his trip to Colorado earlier that month to transport Roan Waters' Dodge Durango back to Indianapolis. She paid for her and BW to fly out on or about March 2nd. Upon their arrival, they took a ride share to a Best Western hotel where they came into contact with Marshall, which is the mom. Marshall gave them the keys, and the three of them then drove back to Indianapolis. Shortly after departing, DW observed Marshall throw her cell phone out the window. Sometime later, Marshall informed DW that she had never wanted Oakley. And tried to explain,
Wow.
right? And tried to explain how challenging motherhood had been for her. Marshall also told her that she ultimately intended to go to North Carolina to be with Nick. I'm not sure exactly who Nick is. I don't think his name, like he's not a witness or anything. So they then interviewed BW. Let me double check this. So BW again is Rowan Waters' older brother, just to remind y'all and myself. All right, so he recalled the trip to Colorado on March 2nd. Upon their return to Indianapolis with Marshall, he stated that he had dropped Marshall off near the intersection of Troy Avenue and Shelby Street. He got back in contact with Marshall on March 4th. She did not have a phone, but he was able to find her hanging out at a nearby business. He informed the officer that he picked her up around 5:30 p.m. that evening and drove her to the Greyhound bus station located in downtown Indianapolis. The officer knows the address to be 350 Illinois Street. He further stated that he had paid about $180 in cash for her to have a one-way ticket to Fayetteville, North Carolina. The departure time was 7:30 p.m. that night. He described Marshall as having changed her hair color to black and only having a couple of bags with her when she left. He was unaware of her contacts or current whereabouts in North Carolina. So he helped her get away. And again, this was after Waters was arrested, I do believe. Let me make sure. Okay, so he recalled receiving a phone call from CM on or about February 7th. On that day, CM informed him that Waters and Marshall had taken Oakley to the hospital to be treated for some kind of injury. However, He explained that he was done with Waters by this date due to an altercation that had transpired between the two of them days earlier. He recalled this early occasion when he had previously arrived at the Albany Street address to visit with Waters. At that time, he observed bruising on Oakley. The brother stated to the detective that he immediately attacked Waters, who he confidently believed was the responsible party for these visible injuries. The two briefly fought before he left the property. However, he never attempted to call the police or DCS over what he had observed that day. I really wish that he would have done that. Like he would have called. Yeah, this is a lot of craziness.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. Okay, so they had stopped speaking to each other. The next time that he heard from him was in the early afternoon hours of February 9th. He received a text from Roan that simply stated, "Bro, I need you." His brother stated that he did not reply or inquire further into what Waters needed help with that day. On March 12th, they interviewed Zach Snow, the biological dad, over the phone. Zach informed him that Marshall had a close friend that likely resided in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He provided her name for possible follow-up. So, they had numerous incoming and outgoing calls with CM's identified cell phone number. Let's see. She made a single outgoing call to 911 on February 9th at 1:43 p.m. The officer has since been able to determine through dispatch that the call was disconnected before an operator could answer. The operator quickly attempted to call back, but there was no answer or return call. Furthermore, there was no collected location history between the hours of 2:30 and 4:30 p.m. that day. And this just goes for the historical call log records. It made multiple outgoing calls. These calls immediately followed the attempted call to 911. So it seems that at some point, one of them dialed 911. Let's see. Oh, this is so much. Okay, so one of the detectives and fellow officers ultimately located and recovered a device from the front desk of the Econo Lodge. So they did have that. The staff explained that they had found the phone abandoned in the parking lot of the hotel on or about March 3rd. They determined the device to be an iPhone 14, and they brought it to, eventually it went to the lab, to the field office. Let's see. On March 13th, the officer went to the Greyhound bus station to inquire about their surveillance video and travel manifest. Employees informed me that nobody by the name of Madison Marshall had departed on a Greyhound bus between the dates of March 3rd and 5th. However, they confirmed that there were indeed departures for that state during this window. They explained that if a customer paid in cash, there was no process to verify the name that he or she had given for the ticket. The employees also explained that the managers with access to the bus station surveillance cameras were not present that day. That's convenient. The same day, Zach Snow called one of the detectives with information pertaining to Marshall's potential whereabouts. He stated that Waters' sister, I think her name is Kayla, Bella, stop it, had informed him that Marshall had recently gotten on a Greyhound bus to Fayetteville. All right. Okay, this is a lot of details, so I'm going to get to the other parts. Just skim through. I went through this whole thing yesterday. So they did a lot of research and a lot of digital forensic stuff because they knew that she was actively on Facebook. They were able to view additional content within her profile to include the posts made to her timeline in recent days. Zach provided screenshots to the detective that he had taken on his phone. The screenshot showed a post to it on March 4th from a Facebook account maintaining the username Bunny Cooper. The post specifically stated, "Text me ASAP." Zach stated that he was confident the Facebook account belonged to Marshall. He explained that Bunny was a nickname that BT exclusively used for Marshall. Furthermore, Cooper was Marshall's father's last name and her former maiden name. So eventually this goes on to tell exactly how they were able to finally track her down. Yeah, and they gave her Miranda rights. She said that she understood her rights and voluntarily waived them by signing an advice of rights form. Right here. So she ultimately told TFO Gralewski that our Waters had killed Oakley at approximately 1:30 p.m. on February 9th. Marshall had been in the kitchen of 305 Albany Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, when Waters entered holding Oakley. Oakley was no longer wearing clothes and was not responsive. Waters initially tried to put her in the bathtub to immerse her in cold water in the hopes of reviving her. When that failed, Waters wrapped Oakley in a pink and black colored blanket that had hearts on it and put her in a rear passenger seat of the Dodge Durango. Before departing, he informed Marshall that he intended to take Oakley to the hospital. Marshall stated that she tried to call 911 as Oakley appeared to be dying, but Waters struck her hard enough to knock the phone out of her hands. So that explains the abandoned 911 call. He then disconnected the call. Marshall stated that upon Waters' return, approximately 1.5 hours later, he only had the blanket that Oakley had been previously wrapped in. He stated that he left her naked body in the woods. Trigger warning. Waters informed her that he had taken Oakley to his grandparents' property in Martinsville. He further explained that he had laid Oakley's body in the woods somewhere on their property. Marshall stated that it could have been in an abandoned house either on or near the area, based on her recollection of Waters' explanation that day and in the days that followed. Marshall said that she was unfamiliar with the family outside of his mother and siblings. She claimed that she had neither met his grandparents nor has she been to their Martinsville address. So remember, this is like her initial statement upon her arrest. Okay, so they identified the property owners, which is, I think this is his parents or grandparents. I'm not exactly sure. But this is where they ultimately find her. It's in the Martinsville, Indiana area. They traveled there that night and made contact with the owners. They confirmed that this was their residential home address. It was located just north of their home within the same property boundaries and had been previously inhabited by their parents before they had died decades earlier. LS and WS explained that they now owned both properties. LS stated that he was Waters' step-grandfather. When Waters, BW, and KW, which is the brother and sister, were children, they had come to their home many times. Kind of gives a background. They did not remember seeing or hearing from him in February of 2023. They also did not observe a Dodge Durango on their property in February or any time after. However, they explained that their property between Redbud Lane and Sedgwick Road was over 20 acres and heavily wooded. They said it was possible he could have been on either of their properties during that time without their knowledge. They had never seen Oakley and were unaware of her disappearance. Good night, Michael. I hope you have a good one. You're good, Mom. First, just going over all the details of Oakley Snow's the affidavit. It's a lot. All right, so they were given consent to search the properties. And they were unable to locate her that night. April 4th, they spoke with the sister. He asked her if she had any family residing in Indiana. She immediately named LS and WS and their residence. She stated that Roan was very familiar with their property due to how often they would play there as children. She and Waters had various locations within the wooded area that they liked to go to include hollowed out trees, deer stands, sheds, and other enclosures. On April 5th, they authorized warrants to seize and search the cellular telephone from CM that maintained the phone number 8808, as well as the phone from BP that maintained the number 2483. Let's see. So a lot was going on. They issued a warrant for investigators to search the Albany Street, Indianapolis, Indiana for the pink and black colored blanket that Oakley's body had been wrapped in. Okay, so when they executed their warrant, They recalled seeing a blanket that matched its description when Roan Waters had lived there with Marshall and her kids. However, investigators were unable to find it that day. They re-interviewed CM, who provided additional details about the events that transpired on February 9th. So remember, Chad, CM is Chad. He was the one who lived there off and on with them. He admitted to receiving a phone call from Marshall saying that Oakley had been hurt and that he needed to return to the house. He remembered her voice being very matter of fact, saying that he needed to bring the Durango back home for them. Upon his arrival home, he did not see Oakley. However, Waters told him multiple times that he had effed up. Chad recalled taking custody of CS while both Marshall and Waters left the house for several hours. CS is Colton, the brother. They returned alone, and Colton was still, Chad was still unaware of Oakley's whereabouts. Wow. So this is the home that they left Colton at. I'm just confused on why they refer to his home as the trap house, because it seems they were living there. So were they living at this trap house? That's where I get a little confused. All right. So let's see. So they re-interviewed BP, which is the mom. She ultimately provided clearer details about the series of events that transpired on February 9th. She stated that Waters had called her in the mid-afternoon of February 9th. He seemed panicked and told her that he had to take Oakley to the emergency room because she had fallen off of a bouncy ball and hit her head. He did not ask her for anything at that time and seemed to only want to notify her of the situation. She could tell that he was inside of a vehicle when he made the call because she could hear his voice echo as if he was currently sitting in a small enclosed place. She could also hear a female speaking to him in the background. She strongly believed that this female was Marshall and that she was in the vehicle with him. She could not recall if the female's voice also sounded panicked. She then called Chad, who told her that he was home alone watching Colton. The mom picked Colton up from him at the Albany Street address. She brought the baby to her place of employment while she waited for the sister to arrive to take custody of him. Hours later, Waters called his mom back. He stated that Marshall had made the decision to abandon Oakley at the hospital. He provided no further details and became agitated when his mom tried to question him further. Towards the conclusion of the interview, the detective asked the mom if she had any prior knowledge to the circumstances of Oakley's disappearance that she had not previously disclosed to FBI or the police department. They showed her the records from the cell phone to emphasize the reoccurring and frequent contacts that she had with Waters that day surrounding the likely time that Oakley was harmed. She denied knowing any further details, but believed it was possible that Waters could have harmed Oakley. The detective next asked her if she had members of her family secure the whereabouts of Marshall and return her to Indianapolis following their arrest, because she feared that Marshall would report to the police what had actually happened to Oakley. The detective additionally asked if Marshall had confided to her information regarding Waters' culpability and Oakley's demise, which was why Marshall was suddenly taken to the Greyhound bus station. The mom admitted to buying a cell phone for her before she left, but denied paying for the ticket. She again denied any further knowledge as to what happened to Oakley or where she was now. They asked if she would be willing to take a polygraph test as to the truthfulness of her statement that day, and she initially agreed and was introduced to FBI Indianapolis certified polygraph examiner. So she did take a polygraph test. This is the mom of the boyfriend, Roan Waters. Oh, geez. I'm gonna try to skip through a lot of the details. Because there's a part in here that I wanted to read that it was really heartbreaking. Let me try to skim through it real quick. Okay. Hold on, let me find it. God, this is so long. I might do a part 2 on this, honestly. Hold on, guys. Let me just find. Okay, I think this is where the actual story, like the truth, comes out. Okay, yeah. So right here, this is a completely different story than what she initially told the mom. So on the morning of February 9th, Marshall and Waters woke up to Oakley crying because she was hungry. Waters threw Oakley onto the floor in response to this due to her crying had agitated him. Her head's impact with the floor had caused Oakley to have a red bump above her right eye. Marshall applied some of her own makeup to Oakley's face to try to hide the bruise. Um, this is Chad came downstairs at some point that day and socialized with them. Marshall prepared some ramen noodles for Oakley as a snack because she was hungry again. Marshall then started preparing lunch for everyone. Chad said that he was going to a gas station to get some Swisher cigars. Oakley initially tried to follow Chad out of the house, but he stopped her and told her that he would be right back. Oakley next entered the kitchen and said, "Mama, eat," to Marshall. Marshall told her that she was making them all food and to wait in the other room. Oakley then walked into the living room where Roan Waters, the boyfriend, was watching TV, while Colton laid on the floor in front of him. Shortly thereafter, Marshall began hearing Waters yell at Oakley. He was specifically ordering her to bounce on her bouncy ball. Marshall described the ball to the detective and, well, to both detectives, as being made of rubber and inflatable. It maintained a handle on top which allowed kids to lightly bounce up and down as they sat on it. Marshall further stated that Oakley had likely been too small to sit on it by herself. She recalled hearing Waters' voice continually get louder and angrier as he told her to bounce. Marshall yelled back at him multiple times to calm down and that Oakley probably did not understand what he was wanting her to do. After the fifth and loudest time that he yelled at her, Marshall stopped what she was doing in the kitchen and walked into the living room. She observed Waters standing over Oakley as she sat trying to bounce on the ball. Waters told Marshall to quit coming in there and sat back down on the couch. Marshall took his retreat as the matter being resolved, so she went back to the kitchen to prepare their meal. Marshall did not recall hearing anything else from the living room until approximately 10 minutes later. At that time, Waters screamed for her twice. Marshall had never heard him scream like that before. She immediately ran towards the living room. She met him in the hallway as he held Oakley in his arms. She saw that Oakley was not moving. Waters continually repeated without prompting that he didn't do anything and that it wasn't his fault. He initially refused to let Marshall take Oakley from him and stripped her of her clothes. Marshall could see Oakley's stomach and chest cavity extend as if she was trying to breathe air. However, she observed what appeared to be a mix of blood and spittle dripping from her mouth. And when she tried to exhale, which appeared to be which created a gurgling sound. Oakley's eyes remained closed throughout this time. Waters placed her in the nearby bathtub and attempted to douse her in cold water to wake her up. When that failed, he brought Oakley into their bedroom and handed her to Marshall. He observed Marshall attempting to call 911 and slapped the phone from her hands. He then took control of the cell phone. Marshall could tell that Oakley was dying. At some point, Waters returned the call to her and the phone to her and called Moncrief. I'm not sure who that is. To tell him, oh, that's the Chad guy, to tell him that something had happened to Oakley and that he needed to come home. When he entered minutes later, he stated, "I knew I shouldn't have left." Marshall explained to the detectives that this meant that he knew he should not have left Waters alone with Oakley. This was because he had likely heard and been aware of the physical abuse that Waters had continually inflicted on her since moving into the Albany Street home. So Waters next wrapped Oakley in a blanket that the mother had recently purchased for Marshall. Marshall described the blanket as being pink and black with flowers on it. She also added that it was a Victoria's Secret brand blanket. They placed Oakley in the back seat of the Durango so that her feet were facing the driver's side and her head was towards the passenger side. Waters entered the driver's seat and Marshall entered the rear passenger seat to be with Oakley. She held Oakley in her lap and occasionally opened the blanket to examine her. By this time, Oakley had stopped trying to breathe and her lips had become blue. Marshall felt her skin, which now seemed cool to the touch. She could also no longer feel a heartbeat as she held her. Marshall pulled Oakley's eyelids back to further examine her, but saw no movement or response in them. She held her hand before eventually climbing up to the front seat next to Waters. That whole paragraph, when I read it, like broke my heart because she tried to de-escalate the situation of whatever was happening when she was trying to cook, and then whatever he did and whatever happened, she's then thrown into the situation where he's just like, on the go, like, let's go, let's throwing her into the vehicle, and she's back there with her daughter holding her and seeing her daughter die in her lap. Like, oh my gosh, it's so heartbreaking. Hey, Megs. It's the kids at Oakley. Yes. This was a very tough one to read, Kristen. Like, you were not kidding. When I read this, I was just like, I had to take a break. All right, so then Waters drove them away from the Albany address towards what seemed like another town. She remembered seeing a sign that said Martinsville. As your affiant drove Marshall past the Reuben Drive Hospital Road exit from I-69 North, Marshall observed a large concrete pillar that had the word Martinsville over it. She stated that this was likely the Martinsville sign that she had first reported seeing during her drive with Waters to dispose of Oakley on February 9th. So, from what I'm reading, and Kristen can probably correct me or let me know if I'm on the right path, but apparently she's with the detectives and she is trying to give them a rundown, and she's riding with them and noticing these road signs and these like things like this pillar that she was able to identify and help them locate Oakley's body. So she was recalling her ride with Roan, but now she's with the detective. So they next drove Marshall past the property of Red Blue Lane. Marshall said the road seemed somewhat familiar, but did not positively identify the residence as the grandparents' house that Rowan Waters had attempted to show her in February. They continued to drive southbound until they came to a T intersection. Okay, so then Marshall did not seem to recognize any of the terrain features, residences, or roads. Marshall continued to provide details about the abandoned house where Oakley was left as they drove. Let's see. Morgantown was directly south of Martinsville and only about 15 minutes from Redbud Lane when searched on Google Maps. They directed Marshall's attention to a dilapidated wooden house that sat at the top of a steep hill near a gravel road. The gravel road led to two nearby residences. Marshall immediately stated, "Oh my God, that's it." So yeah, she was with them and helping them locate Oakland's body. Thank you, Kristen. She repeated this several times and added that she was 100% confident that this was the location where they left Oakley. She was hysterical and sobbing at this time. The detectives requested the assistance of IMPD Missing Persons Lieutenant Steve King, who had been following the car during the drive that day, to remain with Marshall while they went to look at the property. They climbed the hill and noticed that no Ford Mustang or any other vehicle was parked in front of it. However, they noticed ruts along the nearby paved road at the bottom of the hill that showed that something heavy had been towed or dragged away from the premises at some point. Of further note, the abandoned house had been predominantly made of wood, though not much of its exterior or interior remained. It appeared to once have been a single-story, single-family home with an attached garage. They circled the exterior while the other detective entered through an opening in the wall. The interior was extensively cluttered with trash and debris and was difficult to walk through. The detective strongly smelled a sour odor emanating from deeper in the partially exposed living room. He neared the partially exposed kitchen, which shared a wall with the living room, and also smelled the odor. They immediately knew it to be the smell of a decomposing body through training and experience. They strongly felt the odor was emanating from the wooden dresser leaning against the living room wall near the kitchen. Both parties departed from the structure and obtained a warrant from the MCSC to search it for the remains of Oakley. They identified the property containing the heel and the dilapidated house as being 5800 South Bear Wallow Road. Okay, so then you have the CSI investigator arrive, and they go through and they took pictures of the property. They informed him of the nature of the investigation and the likelihood that Oakley was in the dresser. They confirmed upon his further examination of the interior of the residence that the decomposing remains of a small child were in the bottom drawer of the identified dresser. The coroner Ellis, arrived at the scene following this and led the recovery of the child's remains. Given the state of the dresser, the upper portion had to be physically removed to not disturb the fragile remains in the bottom shelf. Upon removing the upper portion, the detectives could clearly see the decomposed body of what appeared to be an adolescent female. A thin board had either fallen or been placed over the body, which partially protected her right arm from being the same level of decomposition as the rest of her. However, her blonde hair had remained attached to her skull and had been left in a loose ponytail by a black-colored hair tie. Additionally, this part, I just make it bigger and you guys can read that part, but that broke my heart. It's how she was placed into the drawer. A blue and white colored sock was still worn on her foot. Given the state of the remains, they advised that the body should be transported intact with the dresser drawer still underneath it. They also requested to have the ISP lab conduct testing on the drawer for any remaining touch DNA and or fingerprints left by the suspect or suspects. Ellis led the efforts to remove the drawer from the property and secure it in his custody awaiting the autopsy. Is Nightbot not working?
Mm-mm.
I see that. With Mom's addition and time to sober detectives, she then went with detectives to trigger any memory. Yeah, that's how I took it. Like at first, I know she was describing, when she had Oakley in her lap, and I had to reread it and then realize that she was then directing detectives to the location of where Oakley was. And yeah, Kristen, when I read that part, I was just like what? Same, Tracy, same. I don't even know if I even got further than this, if I'm just being honest. Let's see if there's anything important. I mean, it's all important, but let's see. Okay, so another interview with Marshall. She informed him that Waters had parked the Durango directly along the gravel road where the detective had also pulled off from South Bear Wallow Road. Marshall informed the detective that she had actually exited the Durango with Waters and climbed the hill with him to look at the property above. She insisted that she had remained outside of it while he went inside to look further, but she clarified that this was why she had been able to provide such specific details about the car that had been abandoned in front of the house, which she would not have been able to see as clearly from the roadway. Her and Waters then climbed back down the hill together. She re-entered the Durango as he removed Oakley from the back seat. Oakley was still wrapped in the blanket as he carried her lifeless body over his shoulder and restarted his ascent. Marshall stated that she did 2 hard lines of fentanyl to get as high as she possibly could after he left. He came back with just the blanket several minutes later. Waters next asked her those questions as she had previously described. He also stated, "I don't need to kill you now," when he was confident that Marshall would not tell anybody what had happened that day. Wow. Waters instructed her that their alibi was that they had left Oakley at a hospital. Marshall explained that upon their return to Indianapolis, they both napped for a short while until they learned that the sister had turned Colton over to DCS. A sister called Waters on the phone to inform him that DCS was likely headed to Albany Street now to speak with him. Waters panicked and began packing their bags. He told Marshall that they were leaving Indiana that night. Regarding Waters' family, Marshall reiterated that she did indeed tell Roan's mom that her son had killed her child. Marshall told her this after she was brought back to Indianapolis by BW and DW. The mom responded by defensively telling Marshall that Waters had just gotten out of prison and that she was not going to allow Marshall to put him back in it. The mom then informed Marshall that she would buy her a bus ticket to wherever she wanted to go with the expectation that she would not return to Indiana. She also provided her with a cell phone and $200 in cash. Marshall agreed and accepted the payment before departing to North Carolina. So the mom was refusing to, like, she was pretty much saying that Marshall was going to be the one to put him back in jail after what he did. I mean, good for her for speaking up, you know. Let's see. So on April 24th, they attended the autopsy of the recovered adolescent female, which was conducted at the coroner's office. Positive identification and toxicology are currently pending. At the conclusion of the autopsy, CSI Russell collected the drawer as evidence, packaged and sealed it in a cardboard box, and secured it in the locked and secured area of the coroner's office. And as of April 25th, they returned to the Morgan County Coroner's Office and retrieved the drawer and transported it to ISP Crime Lab. And that was the end of that. But that is horrible. The whole story just breaks my heart. Thank you, Kristen, by the way, for sending me this information and this affidavit to go over.
Mhm.
I appreciate it. And it was a hard one to read. Oh my gosh. In my opinion, cooperative now to help her case in any way she can. She will get less time than him, but I doubt a deal. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She did help in locating Oakley and telling them, you know, what she did, but yeah, she's still gonna get some time. Well, Tracy, that was their alibi, but they didn't do that. That's what he said their alibi was going to be, but they actually abandoned her in a home in a dresser drawer and just ugh. I don't know initially what happened at the home. Like, I'm still wondering what happened in that 10 minutes, you know, when after he was yelling at her about the ball incident, and then he yells in such a way that it alarmed her. She had never heard him yell like that before, and they meet each other in the hallway, and Oakley is, you know, don't really look like she was actively dying. She had blood, and like, and it's just like, what happened? What did he do, or what happened? He kept saying he didn't do it, and it's not his fault. So it's like, what happened in that time frame? But I'm pretty sure from the autopsy and everything, we'll know if it was like blunt force or whatever possibly happened during that time. Yeah, Tracy, that it should have raised flags. And, you know, I go back to the person whose home that they lived in, or the guy, whenever he did witness, you know, so much, I just wish that he would have done the right thing and let DCS know what was going on then. Like, if you see something, say something. And multiple people did, you know, witness like the bruises. And I mean, they had the incident back in November, and it's like there were so many red flags, and she could have been saved, and nothing was done. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, Kristen. It's horrible. I mean, she's 2 years old, and I know those bouncy balls that they're talking about, like, those things are like huge, and like, for the mom to, you know, say like, stop yelling at her. She doesn't understand what you're telling her to do, and she's probably too small for it anyway. And just the minute she walks away, within 10 minutes, something happened. Something horrible happened. But yeah. Anybody have anything to add or anything?
Mm-hmm.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go for it.
Um, Here's the other thing is even if you're nervous to say something,
Mhm.
it's a child's life. And I'm sorry, but it matters a lot more than your feelings.
For sure.
Your
Yeah.
feelings can recover, the child cannot. You might be the only person to save that child if you speak up.
It's true. A lot of people are afraid to like, I don't want to step on toes. Like I've heard that before. And it's like, no, you're not. You could be possibly saving this child's life. Like do the right thing.
Hmm. It's better to be wrong than to have been the one person who could have stopped it and have not done it.
Yep.
That's the kind of guilt that no one wants to live with. And I'm not trying to be an asshole either. It's
No,
just like
we
I've
always
seen too many people turn a blind eye to this kind of abuse,
Mhm.
and it needs to stop.
Yeah, because it's the same with Noel Rodriguez Alvarez.
Yeah.
They witnessed him being not malnourished and not looking healthy and all this stuff. And it's like, if something in your mind says this doesn't seem right, like if you have to question it and you're looking at a kid here, like just call it in. It's better to call it in and be wrong than not calling it in. And I think you said that the other day, like not calling it in and then this happens.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish these cases had the manpower to check the well-being of these children before the worst things happen. I know.
Hmm.
That's what, Kristen was saying, like the workload is so overwhelmed and our system needs fixing. There's a lot that needs to be fixed. Yeah, and the well-being of adults as well. So yeah, if you know something, if you see something, say something.
Hmm.
Speak up so we can avoid things like this happening.
Yeah. And don't be embarrassed to speak up.
No, you're doing the right thing.
Hmm.
Well, this is very disturbing. I'm sorry for all those details, but
Well, I'm glad that Nightbot finally decided to join us.
my thoughts always messing up.
Yeah, he is. Fired.
Fired, Nightbot. Good night. All right. Well, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and end this live now because it's been a long day.
Hmm.
And this was a long read. It's heavy. Mm, gonna get off,
Well,
eat some
you're
dinner.
not gonna like my stream.
Well, what is it? Are you not telling me?
Um, the
Did you already
website.
say that? Oh, what?
The website.
Did you already set it up?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why?
Oh, I was just asking. I'm gonna grab my food, but I can still be there if you need me to.
Oh, like you still have 30 minutes.
Yeah, but I'm not staying. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna stay live. There's hardly anybody here.
Yeah.
All right. Good night. Good night, Mom. First, always, and you're welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm gonna drop a couple of commands for Nightbot since he's working now.
Yay, finally.
Mm-mm-mm.
Mm-mm-mm.
Good night, Tracy.
Good night.
All right. Well, we will hopefully see you guys over in Sipa's live in about 30
Hmm.
minutes. And I
Yeah.
thank you for watching. listening to the details. I'm glad that they found her. I am
Very.
still going to try to keep a lookout for the remains that were found in Indiana because,
Mm-hmm.
I am wondering about that. But both of these people are in custody that are responsible for Oakley, and now we just, pray for the justice system to do its job.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, thank you, Sifa, for being here.
Yeah, of course.
Good night, guys. Y'all enjoy y'all weekend.
Good
Love
night.
you all. Thank you, mods. Y'all have a good one.